What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope we're all doing well. As you can see, I have two other gentlemen here with me today. I've actually never done this before. I've never had any virtual guests in this podcast suite. I've had them in person. We've had virtual guests for other things that I do in the studio downstairs here, but never had virtual guests here in the podcast suite. We have closest to me, actually, what you guys are seeing, I believe to my right or maybe to my left. This might be a bit of a mirror, is Sailor, and then the other gentleman, that is Curtis. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's jump right in. This ain't how Justin. By the way, shout out to Justin for putting all this together. It's not easy to do a production like this in a small studio like this. So shout out to him for working very hard for the past about from the time we were filming this, past like 45 minutes to an hour at least. So, but let's jump right in. Sailor, I'll start with you. Give me some draft tips, just general draft advice that you have for anybody who might be drafting their fantasy football team currently.
All right. So first off, when it comes to quarterbacks, you don't have to take the best quarterbacks in the league. Take a quarterback who is on a good team with a good O line, good receivers, great coaching, and an overall better situation. You want to take a quarterback, let's say you'd rather take a quarterback like CJ Stroud rather than somebody like Tua, who's also in a good position, but is still just CJ Stroud is in a better position, and I believe is the better quarterback.
Definitely, yeah, I definitely agree with that. You're better off having a solid quarterback and really good running back receivers, tight ends, stuff like that, than having, even if you have like an elite quarterback, but the rest of your team isn't great. But yeah, definitely look for quarterbacks that are that have weapons around them, even if they're only good necessarily because of the weapons. That might matter maybe for the playoffs for the NFL, but for fantasy, you're only going to about the last week in the regular season. That doesn't really matter to you as a fantasy owner. Like Sarah said, definitely look for quarterbacks that are just happen to have very good weapons around them and just have the solid backgrounds. They will get them. They will get you the most points. All right, so Curtis, what is your direct advice for people that are currently drafting fantasy football teams?
Load up on running backs. That's my load up on quality running backs, I should say. Depending on how your league treats running backs, how they score them, it really makes sense to find running backs that are in, like Sailor said, good positions to succeed. The pass catchers out of the backfield have, probably exponentially increased in value over the last several seasons. And if you can get a running back that is able to be a dual threat, not just running the ball between the tackles or stretching the defense with the outside runs, but also the screen passes, getting them to run short to intermediate routes, that is where the money is made for running backs nowadays, rather than say 10 years ago where it was a different ball game as far as running backs. So their demand is higher and their need is to be more athletic, and the ability to do different things on the field, other than just run the ball between the tackles, is paramount, and it really helps in fantasy value as well.
Definitely agree with that. I mean, if anybody who's watched football at any point in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, you know, a lot of times when running backs are being scouted, if they don't aren't really a pass catcher, they're not going that high in the draft. I mean, obviously, drafting running backs now, a lot of times if you look at most of the elite backs outside of Christian McCaffrey, like just talking NFL wise, a lot of them were second, third, fourth, fifth round picks. So yeah,
Yeah,
and pass catching is huge for running back, especially when you have if you have a solid receiving core, they can kind of sneak behind the defense, kind of go unguarded. It changes the game. It changes your passing offense. It helps set up your offense a lot better. And fantasy running backs that can catch the ball are gold. And yeah, loading up running backs is always a great strategy. There's like this fancy strategy of like zero running back strategy. A couple of you randos out there like to employ. I never understood it. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
No, neither did I.
my running backs, and the running backs are very important in fantasy football. They're can be a little hard to come by, but if you can get some really solid running backs, you'll be in a good spot.
it's actually the position the most will look for on the waiver wire, say weeks
Yeah.
4 or 5, when the running backs that are not doing well, they're going to look at the waiver wire for a running back. And so getting yourself a good couple of picks at running back, especially if your league uses two at once, you're really in a good position if you spend some time investing some research into your running backs.
Absolutely. And most leagues I feel like do have two back spots. I know like the Yahoo might be a little different, but I know ESPN has two spots. I believe
Mhm.
CBS does, and Sleeper does. So most leagues, obviously, yeah, every league's different, but most leagues do have two back spots. So definitely good to load up on running backs. For me, I personally think that you should wait. You should not take a defense or a kicker until your last two picks. That's a bit of a personal thing for me. I just find that having depth in fantasy football is very important. Obviously, it's important in the NFL as well, and that's really in all sports. But to me, having just really good depth is important to me. So I feel like I think if you stream your defensive kicker, I think you'll be just fine. So last two picks, do your research, find the defense that has a good matchup. For example, the New Orleans Saints are playing the Carolina Panthers week one. Carolina's offense isn't great. Bryce Young is, still very raw. Obviously, a very tough rookie year. Yeah, really tough. Got tough set of cards he got. He's still learning. Saints got a pretty good defensive line. That could be a good matchup. I forget who's playing New England Patriots week one, but that offense looks pretty bad. Whoever's playing them, take them in the 15th round, and for kickers, just look for kickers, that are in good offenses and ones you think are going to probably get a lot of field goals because you only get 1 point for extra points, but you get, three, anywhere from like 3 to 5. And some leagues have like, extra bonuses for, longer the field goal
Distance, yeah.
Mhm.
distance. So, just look for a kicker that's in a good offense that's going to kick a lot of field goals. So don't overthink defense kickers. You can definitely wait till the end of the draft on those. And you get as much depth as you can.
Yeah. Well, you can use the same strategy that I said, like with a good quarterback, bad situation with kickers. Like you don't have to take the best kicker in the league. Like take a kicker who is on a good offensive power team that's going to be getting down to the red zone a lot, which is going to
Mhm.
give him more opportunities to score, which is going to get your team more points.
Yeah, if you can get a
Absolutely.
kicker that's going to give you 2 to 3 solid field goals a game, or even 1 to 2, it's at least points. And you're looking anywhere from, if you can get 6 to 10 points from your kicker every single week, you're in business.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I try and look for kickers. I try and look who's gonna give me roughly 10 points. If they get me 7 or 8, all right, I can live with that. But
Yeah,
10 really solid. And to get anything more than that's just a bonus. You have once in a while you have one of those games. The guy goes out and gets you 4 field goals.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Guy can get you 7 to 10 points. Obviously, curse at 6 to 10, you'll be in a very good spot that week.
Yeah. Yeah, because a better situation kicker is it's better than the best kicker in the league. Like Cameron Dicker, he had a 93% like percentage in making field goals, but they're on a very questionable Chargers offense.
Mhm. Yeah, not a ton of weapons there. But yeah, moving on, let's talk about some breakout candidates. For those of you that are new to fantasy football, a breakout is someone who think is going to just have a career, have a lot more points than they did the year prior or for their whole career. So we'll do reverse order this time. Curtis, we'll start with you. Who are your breakout candidates this year?
First one I'm going to talk about is hometown kid, Jamison Williams for Detroit. The reason I'm going to go this way, you have plenty of targets in front of him as far as that are going to eat up a majority of the targets for the Lions that Jared Goff is going to pass to. However, Jamison Williams in his third season, he had the suspension his rookie season from the gambling incident. Second season, he was better. Third season, this should be the season where he's able to break out. He's had an excellent camp, and he has speed to take the top off of defenses. He is the Lions' deep threat in this offense, and while he may not be getting all of the targets, he will be able to make the most of what he is getting. So that is having a good deep threat on your roster to get you those chunk plays downfield. Um, is a good asset to have. So if you have a shot to get Jamison Williams, I wouldn't say pick him up in the first, as the first or even probably second wide receiver pick you have, but certainly, third, maybe fourth, maybe fifth wide receiver pick that you get if
Good
you
bench
have him
spot.
available. That's his value right there. I think that he has a lot of upside, And if he is able to show that top end speed and through camp, he's eliminated his ball security issues. At least so as it says right now. Um, that should be a really, really good value pick.
Absolutely. And he's Curtis, you allude to it. He's not going super high in drafts either because
No,
his numbers weren't, through the roof last year because he missed a bunch of games with the suspension for the gambling stuff, which I thought was kind of dumb. I mean,
well, that
obviously
was 2 years ago. It was last year that it was last year that he was facing some injuries in that too. So,
that's right. Yeah, he
yep,
he just had a bunch of things, and coming out of college, he had a torn too. People forget
yep,
how good the guy was at Alabama. He would have easily been the top receiver drafted coming out of college if he had not having the injury. It
correct, yep.
was kind of a freak injury he had in college. The talent's always been there. He's got a really good offense. He's got a pretty solid quarterback. And he's right. His ADP is low enough to where there really isn't any risk if you were to miss on him. And
Mhm.
I think he could have a really good year this year
Yep.
for Lions. But all right, Sailor, up. Uh, what about you? Who are your breakout candidates this year?
So I'm gonna go for running backs. I'm gonna go with Tajai Spears. For Tennessee, I mean they lost Derrick Henry. So and the running back they brought in is Tony Pollard, and I like Tony Pollard, but I mean he's going into his sixth season, and he's only had two 1,000-yard seasons, and he regressed a lot last year. Like
Mhm.
I get that Cowboys team kind of fell off at the end, but like compared to the season, he had three less touchdowns last year than he did the year before, and he's going to the Saints, which is a very questionable offense. And I've heard that Tajai Spears has outbeat Tony Pollard in just about every single quality you want in a running back throughout this preseason and training camp, like in yards per carry and like in juke efficiency and just about everything. And again, I like Tony Pollard, but I really see Tajai Spears breaking out as the running back one this year, especially since we have no idea if Will Levis is gonna be able to hold up the passing game well.
Yeah, that's not what I thought of, but that's you give very good reasons there. Tony Pollard when they had Zeke there, he was honestly more effective. When he was able to kind of water down Pollard's reps, he was honestly more effective when he took over the three down role last year. Wasn't as effective. Just pretty much every category, pretty much he wasn't as effective. And look, is it a bad move for the Titans to bring him in? No, not necessarily. If you want to go into deep, like whether the contract was appropriate or not, that's a whole nother discussion, obviously. But he actually played very well last year. He just didn't get a ton of eyes. The Titans were so bad last year. You obviously had Derrick Henry, who was the bell cow last year. You mentioned that he's obviously now with the Baltimore Ravens. So I think Spears, and he's only going in probably the eighth or ninth round at the probably the
Very late, very late.
so,
Yeah.
at that point, your draft gets to come off the bench. At that point, you know, he's to me the running back to own it. Sure, in Tennessee, I don't really think that's all that close.
Yeah. So I
Obviously,
see him breaking out as a prime flex option this year.
definitely
Okay.
be the option this year. For me, I'm not sure if I want to call it a breakout because he's a rookie, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. should have a really huge year. I know, actually, off camera, we were kind of talking about him. I mean, we saw what the kid did in college. He obviously his father is a Hall of Fame receiver. But we saw what he did in college. I thought if he came out last year, I still would have taken him as the first receiver off the board, even if he came out even a year earlier. Kyler, obviously he's number one overall pick. You could probably argue he hasn't been, lived up quite to the hype. You could argue, he's had injuries and some other things, but the kid's got a cannon if nothing else. And Marvin Harrison, he's going to get so many targets. They don't have a ton of other receivers over there, so I think he should have a really huge year for the
I'm
Arizona Cardinals.
gonna compound on that. I think Marvin Harrison's a really, really good pick at breakout as well. Main reason because he is now the number one in Arizona.
Oh, by
He has the
far.
skill set to do that, and there's not really anybody else in the Arizona roster that's going to come close ever since Hopkins left. Now it's basically Marvin Harrison Jr. or bust, and it's going to depend on how well Kyler Murray plays and if he can stay healthy or not. Because that was a concern for Murray the last couple seasons. So I think you're right on the money with him. He was one of my other noted breakouts, so I wanted to shout out for that one. That was nice.
Yeah, me
And
too.
yeah, and obviously, the talent's obviously there. There's a reason
Mhm.
he was pick in the draft. And yeah, I mean, we both touched on it. The target share is just going to be.
Rookies are a hard thing to pick though in
They
fantasy
are.
because
Yeah.
yeah, they're either boom or bust in a lot of cases
Mm,
for like the one season for fantasy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Rookie.
Marvin a lot because I mean he proved himself like he proved himself with a good quarterback in CJ Stroud, and then he proved himself again with a questionable quarterback with Kyle McCord last year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if Kyler stays healthy, there's no reason why he can't have an excellent season and be right there in the offensive rookie of the year race.
Yep.
All right, but that was our breakout candidates. Let's go to our bust candidates, guys. We think are going to underperform this year. So, Sailor, I'll start with you. Who are your bust candidates this year?
I have multiple, but I think I'm gonna pick my main one as probably I'm gonna go Stephon Diggs. I know a lot of people. I He's a great receiver. I know that. There's no doubt about that. But the fact that he fell off drastically in the second half last year with a top five quarterback in Josh Allen, and when his best like wide receiver competition was Gabe Davis, and he fell back like basically pretty much half his production of any other year in the second half, and the fact that he's now going into one of the most crowded wide receiver rooms in the league with a now broke out Nico Collins and then a red zone threat Tank Dell. And not to mention, they also still have Dalton Schultz, who's one of the more underrated tight ends in the league.
Mhm.
Not to mention, they just got a now like secure running back spot in Joe Mixon. So Diggs, he's not going to get a lot of, he's still going to get them, but he's not going to get nearly as many red zone targets, let alone targets at all. So his touchdowns are going to go down, which is going to be less fantasy value. And again, overall, he's not the wide receiver one there. So he's going to get way less just overall drive production. So
He's going to need to steal those targets essentially
yeah.
and play well with what he's got to get more.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, is he a very good receiver? Absolutely. And I think that was a great move of Texans to get him. But if you're looking at it from a fan's perspective, like you said, he's not the number one option anymore, like he was in Buffalo. He's not going to be as much in the red zone. His value is going to go down. And I mean, like you said, he fell off a lot in the second half of last season. I mean, yes, he still has a great quarterback going from Josh Allen to CJ Stroud, and yes, Stroud, or you can argue, all right, he does less interceptions, but he's not going to have the same target share that he had in Buffalo. It's just isn't going to happen. It's not physically possible. All right, Curtis, who are you? Who are your bust candidates?
I've got a couple. One, I'm going to say Terry McLaurin out of Washington. The Commanders have a new play caller out there. That's Cliff Kingsbury, who is not very adept at getting potential out of his wide receiver room. Biggest example of that is when Cliff Kingsbury was in Arizona. His only top 28 receiver in fantasy while he was there the 4 years was DeAndre Hopkins for 1 year. He was 28th. So that's something to consider. And then you have he's just not as he doesn't get the targets. He doesn't have the drive. He had a slow season last season, so he really needs to turn it around in an offense with a rookie quarterback that it's going to be tough to follow. The other one I have, DeAndre Swift. He's going into a crowded running back room in Chicago behind a Khalil Herbert who's hungry. He's young. Swift is on his third team in 3 seasons. Detroit, Philly, and now Chicago. And the questions are still there for DeAndre. The motivation, the health. And so I really have a hard time putting him above even somebody on his own team, let alone other running backs in the league that have a lot of high upside. So DeAndre Swift is definitely my bust candidate aside from Terry McLaurin. So those are my two.
You definitely agree with DeAndre Swift. I mean, he's gonna regress. It's just a overall worse situation for him. It's a worse offense. It's a worse offensive line. It's a worse team. It's a worse organization going from the Eagles to the Bears.
It's actually arguably a similar situation from the Eagles to the Bears as far as the running back room goes, because it was a crowded room in Philly and a crowded room now in Chicago. And
Yeah.
then you add on to that Chicago's offensive line struggles.
Yeah.
That does not spell success for somebody who does not work well behind a decent offensive line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't honestly it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to look at that one. It just overall it's just a worse situation for him. And he's never been a huge touchdown guy either. I feel like, I mean, yes, the tush push in Philly took away touchdowns, And
Right.
last year, he would get him down to the one, and then it was, oh, all right, everyone get behind you and Hurts and shove him into the end zone. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very popular bust pick from pretty much every expert I've talked to, and it's pretty clear why he's definitely going to have some regression this year. For my bust pick, I don't love Travis Etienne this year, to be honest. I don't hate the player by any means. I think he's a very good player, but just he's going pretty early in drafts. And Jacksonville, I mean, their line's pretty solid. Jacksonville's weird. Their offense is weird. I feel like every year their offense is going to be one of the best in the league, and it just isn't for whatever reason. Where it's Trevor Lawrence, not living up to the hype maybe to this point, whether it's the line, whether it's the coaching, whatever it is, and just apparently he's supposed to split carries with Tank Bigsby as well. So I just think he's gonna get a lot less work than he did last year and even the year prior. Going to go that far back, and just and Jacksonville has never really ran the ball super efficiently, you know, under Trevor Lawrence. So I just don't see how, you know, this is a guy who was solid last year and now he's gonna have even less carries. I don't see how he's not going to regress.
Well, he's gonna regress for sure because their passing game is gonna go way up this season.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
you draft Brian Thomas, who they love in camp. I mean, I like him too. I liked him coming out of LSU. They drafted him in the first round, so they must like them a little bit at least. And
Yeah.
they have been raving about him in camp. You have Kirk there, a guy whenever when he signed there, we were like, oh my god, how did you get the guy that much money? He's actually been really, really very, very good for them. Evan Engram had 114 catches last year. Lawrence loves that guy. I'm sure
Yeah.
he'll get a bunch. I'm sure he'll be very useful as well. So he's not gonna that's a team that's not gonna probably run a whole lot, and he's gonna have to split with Tank Bigsby. I think he's gonna regress.
Jacksonville as a whole is a team that is still, I wouldn't say they're in the middle of their rebuild, but they're still working on it.
Yeah.
And so that's a team that still has to develop a kind of an offensive personality. Yeah, they have Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, he's very good at what he does. And talk about Christian Kirk. They signed him. They signed him as a number one receiver because they didn't have anybody
Yeah,
else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
quite frankly, he's lived up to the bill of being a number one on a team that, well, they only had one option.
Yeah.
So he's been good. But he himself needs to improve as well. So
Mhm.
Jacksonville's a bit of an enigma right now.
Yeah.
yeah, they're a team. I feel like they're a team. If you were just a casual fan and you just saw the names, you'd think, oh my goodness, that's a phenomenal team. They're gonna win 12, 13 games. But when you go deeper, you're like there's nothing they do really, really well. Like every team I think has something to do like elitely. They don't
Yeah.
really have that they don't run the ball incredibly well. They don't rush the passer incredibly well.
Mhm.
They don't cover incredibly well. So yeah, like you said, Curve, that's a good point. They just don't really have an identity yet. They're still kind of
Yeah.
developing.
They're just average everywhere.
Yeah.
They are very average. Yeah, their definition of just middle of the road. So trying to pivot to a direction. Hopefully, at some point this year, they kind of pick a direction and they develop some identity, and maybe that will help Travis Etienne. But until they do, it's hard to see him not regressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kirk is regressing. He's gonna regress this year too.
Mhm.
It got proved last year when they signed Calvin Ridley. So
Yep.
like he went way down. He got 400 yards less than the year before and 5 touchdowns less and almost 30 less receptions from when they had nobody at the receiver room to when they signed Calvin Ridley. And now they just drafted Brian Thomas Jr., who's almost twice his size.
Yeah. So his targets got split in half and now are getting split into thirds. So
Yeah.
it's not a good time to be a Christian Kirk fan if you're
No.
looking for fantasy value from him either.
No, definitely not. But moving on, let's talk about sleepers, guys that no one's kind of talking about. Maybe go much later in draft that could be really, 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 really useful. So, Kurt, I'll start with you. Who are your sleepers this year?
I got a couple. First one I'm going to talk about is out of KC, Xavier Worthy. He is in one of the backup slots for wide receiver right now. But there's a couple of factors that are working in his favor. One, Rashee Rice is looking at a suspension, so he's going to get some playing time. It seems in that side. You've got Marquise Brown, who's fighting a shoulder injury right now, so he is going to be tender with that, and it opens up Xavier Worthy in the wide receiver room to be able to stretch the field. Mahomes needs that deep threat. He needs that option to go beyond the short to intermediate passing plays. Worthy has a chance to be that. And yeah, you have Travis Kelce, but Travis Kelce is like 2 years away from the retirement home. Okay. He's 35 years old. He's getting up there in age. And he's more worried about Taylor Swift's next album than he is about a Super Bowl in KC anymore. He's already been there, done that. At this point, Mahomes needs somebody to be able to take the top off of defenses, stretch the field a bit, and open up the short to intermediate game for other receivers. Xavier Worthy is that option. On the other side, Rico Dowdle for Dallas. He is the backup, the number two, actually probably the number three now to Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook, as Dalvin Cook just signed with Dallas. So Zeke just came off a season where he averaged his least amount of yards per carry at 3.5. And his yards per carry has gone down steadily over the last several years. Dalvin Cook is coming into Dallas as a newcomer, and so he needs to make his identity felt. But what kind of Dalvin Cook are we going to see? So Rico Dowdle in that spot could get some snaps with the first team, could end up taking at least Zeke's spot, if not being a solid number two to Dalvin Cook as well. He will get his carries, and that's an option as a sleeper pick that you could look at. Even if not drafting him, look at him on the waiver wire weeks 3, week 4, see what these guys have for it.
Yeah, those are two very good picks. Also, I believe Hollywood Brown's gonna miss the first game or two, maybe 3 in Kansas City. So that's just again more targets for Xavier Worthy. I mean, the guy has speed. You can't speed. You know, he broke the 40-yard dash record. He's extremely fast. Obviously, having Patrick Mahomes throwing the football is going to help. And Chiefs love those speedy receivers. They've had a lot in the last bunch of years. Tyreek Hill, Hollywood Brown. They brought him this year. Rasheed Rice guy you drafted last year. Yeah, Xavier Worthy fits very well in Kansas City. And here we go down to to me, I do think he will emerge honestly in Dallas. Zeke is just much older. Dalvin Cook is much older. He signed a couple of days ago at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm not really expecting a whole lot from those guys. Dallas is going to have to be able to run the ball at some point. To me, their offense has looked the best under Dak Prescott, and really since Mike McCarthy took over when they run the ball effectively. And Dowdle's a guy who I thought actually when he played last year did actually ran the ball pretty well. Didn't get a ton of reps last year. They were so hell bent on just feeding Tony Pollard. Didn't really work. But I do think at some point someone's going to have to emerge from that backfield. It's like when you go into a year backfields like that, somebody always emerges. I think the guy will be Rico Dowdle.
Yep, I would agree with that. Sailor, you've got I left you Kyler if you want him.
No, I got better options. Don't worry.
Okay, fair enough.
Two sleepers. I'm gonna do one running back and one receiver. My running back is Devin Singletary. I think is he the most talented running back in the world? No, but I mean, right now on average, he's going all the way to the 8th round when he's the starting. Is that Giants team a bad team? Absolutely, but I mean, he has the only competition he has at running back is a rookie turned running back who was a receiver in college, and Tyrone Tracy, and then Eric Gray, who's just a preseason legend. And the fact that their passing game is going to be very, very questionable this year with Daniel Jones. And I mean, Devin Singletary, he's gotten over 1,000 yards total the past 3 seasons in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention the fact that he beat out Dameon Pierce for Houston's starting spot last year, which surprised me because I liked Dameon Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he's going all the way in the 8th round when he's, again, the clear starter there. So he's my sleeper running back.
I see you on that. My only concern with him is New York's offensive line.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too, absolutely. And then my receiver, I'm going to have to, it's a tie kind of between Jackson Smith-Njigba and then Ladd McConkey. But overall, I'm going to go Ladd McConkey. I know he's a rookie. I know he's had some injury problems, but he had 12 touchdowns in 2 years in college on a stacked Georgia team. And now he's going to, now he's in LA where his best wide receiver competition is Josh Palmer. I like Josh Palmer, but he's not a clear wide receiver 1. And from the looks of training camp and preseason, Ladd McConkey has put up a big fight at that wide receiver one spot. And I know Justin Herbert likes McConkey a lot. He's all he's talked about. So, and they have probably, other than Dallas, the most questionable running back room in the entire NFL. I mean, your three running backs are J.K. Dobbins, who's played 4 games his entire career. You have Gus Edwards, who, yeah, he's a touchdown guy, but that's about he's starting to get up there in age. And again, the only reason he was a touchdown guy is because they had zero competition at their running back spot in Baltimore
Mhm.
last year. And then a rookie, Kimani Vidal. So, and Justin Herbert, he's a passing guy. Like they had Eckler, even when they had Eckler, he was still more of a pass catching running back than a ground pound run it down the drive running back. So, and Ladd McConkey, he's barely even in the top 100 picks for most leagues. He's going all the way in the eighth, ninth, sometimes even 10th round, which is diabolical to me. So, yeah, he's my main sleeper wide receiver.
Cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Ladd. He's gonna. I liked him at Georgia. I liked him when Chargers drafted him. Like you said, we have heard a lot. His name's mentioned a lot out of Chargers camp. They have been very, very happy with what they've seen, and he's probably the one there at this point. I feel like that room. Obviously, you send Keenan Allen over to the Chicago Bears. You let go of Mike Williams, end up signing in New York with the New York Jets. So yeah, he should be the one. He's got a very good quarterback who's got a great arm. He should, if nothing else, have a bunch of yards. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
hmm Yeah,
And
because as a rookie, again, rookies are questionable. The fact that he did great production in college, again, on a stacked Georgia team with plenty of competition in the receiving and running back spot, and now he's going to a team with almost zero
Mhm.
competition.
Another question mark there is still the offensive line. It's the same thing that Justin Herbert's been feeling the last several seasons is offensive line deficiencies in LA, and then you add the rookie running back to the mix, and will he be to have a good season, have a breakout year?
And they have no tight end there either. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they
Long we are away from the era of Antonio Gates.
yeah.
yeah, they haven't had a tight end there in a little while now. But the Len McConkey's target share should be very large, so he should get a
Yep.
lot of reps. I definitely agree with him as a sleeper. For my sleepers, I'll do one of them I have on here is actually Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, New England's offensive line is pitiful. I think that's the only reason that Drake May isn't starting. He clearly is ready. Jacoby Brissett is, as boring as it gets to that position, but I think they're like, I don't want to get my quarterback decimated, but in the first month. But to me, they're gonna have to run the ball, especially with Brissett starting. He does not have an arm by any means. That receiver is also really concerning. Their one is Kendrick Bourne. In fact, I think he might be on the pup of the year. So their one right now might be Jalen Polk. They're stuck around in Washington, who I didn't like coming out, but to
Yeah.
throw him in as a one, day one in that offense, but for a guy who I don't even know if he's a one, he might be more of a two, which is
Hey,
fine.
watch out for Javon Baker. That's all I'm gonna say.
He's a talented kid as well. We'll see how that works out, especially in future years when they start to build up their offense a little more. But so I don't expect them to have the passing offense this year. Uh, when you have a line like that, that's kind of that's problem the main to use multiple combinations and it is very inexperienced. It's always easier to run block than to pass block as an offensive lineman. Run blocking, you're pushing forward. Pass blocking, you're kind of like
Dropping back.
so it's always easier to run block. Every lineman, if you ask them, I'm sure would rather run block than pass block. And he's a big back. Stevenson can be hard to tackle. They got to play the New York Jets twice. They have a great defense. Offense. I mean, you never know if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. Offense, if he goes down in the first series again, obviously now you're going to be running Tyrod Taylor out there. It'll be probably the same thing you've had for the God knows how many years now for the New York Jets, and they'll do what every team did: run with damn ball and tie up a defense because their offense is going to score at that point.
Yep.
Miami's got a pretty good defense. Buffalo's got a pretty good defense, so they're gonna want to keep. And they also all those teams could possibly have high powered offenses. So, uh, they might want to. Strategy might be to run the ball a lot, hire out the defense, keep the offense off the field. He also can catch the ball a lot. We talked earlier. Curtis mentioned it. Pass catch throwbacks are very useful. So, although their offensive line is a concern, their offensive line is really bad. I'm not gonna let. I don't know who the left tackle is, and the season starts in a week. That's not good. But
Yeah.
we knew about their quarterback. I think yesterday or this morning, and I don't know if we know what left tackle is. So it's going to be a long year for the New England Patriots. But I think Stevenson and Fancy should be a good option. And my other pick is actually, we mentioned it earlier, Brian Thomas Jr. I just think he's going to get a pretty big target share. We talked about Jack Wilson throwing the ball a lot. He's the number one option there. Talented kid coming out of LSU. They have raved about him in camp. He's going pretty late, like eighth, ninth round. I've seen draft rates even gone the 10th. So I just think I think that's really good value. So Brian Thomas, that's probably my main one. I feel a little more comfortable with that Brian Thomas than Armando Stevenson because of the offensive line in New England.
Okay.
But yeah, so those are my sleepers. So now we're gonna talk some ADPs, average draft positions. I have some players I'm gonna ask you guys, but first I'm gonna go to the floor. So Sailor, do you have any guys that you either have an ADP either that can be either too high, guys going too early, or ADPs that you're kind of surprised that guys are going a little bit later than they probably should be?
Well, one that I know is going way too low is Dak Prescott, and I don't like Dak Prescott. Like, I think he's one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the league, but the fact that he's going like as QB9 this year is pretty crazy to me, considering he was one of three quarterbacks in the league to pass for over 4,500 yards last season. The fact that he led the league in touchdown passes. The fact that Jake Ferguson has now established himself as a viable tight end one, and the fact that they've upgraded their O line as well. Like, is their coaching situation awful? Absolutely. But I mean, he's proved himself to be a great regular season quarterback in a bad coaching situation. So, I mean, the fact, and not to mention, Prescott finished as QB3 in fantasy last year, which I found that out today.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's going all the way as QB9, QB10, even QB11 in some leagues is beyond me.
I think there's some inherent bias against Dak Prescott because he's a Cowboy. And it's not necessarily you, Sailor, but there's a lot of people that don't like him because he's a Cowboy. I am not a Cowboys fan by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if that whole stadium could just fall into the earth, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
That being said,
no arguments here.
if Dak Prescott played on any other roster with any other uniform on, I think his credibility would shoot up way higher than what it is. He's a good quarterback. He can get the ball down the field with long passes. He can go short to intermediate. So I completely agree with you. I think there's no reason he should be a QB9 in any draft. I think that with the targets that he has, CD Lamb, who just inked a 4-year extension, Jake Ferguson, who you talked about, that's definitely a really good sleeper pick, or ADP pick for the quarterback position. No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, Dak Prescott has always been the guy. If you're building an NFL team and he's your quarterback, you don't expect to ever win a Super Bowl. But building a fantasy team, if you can draft him as your quarterback, I think he'll be in really good shape. The guy just always has really good weapons around him. Dallas always seems to be able to, have a really good supporting cast. For whatever reason, once the calendar turns to January, they forget something happened.
They turn into a pumpkin. It happens.
Yeah,
death, taxes, and the Cowboys failing in January is just one of those inevitabilities in life.
Button it up in January.
Yep.
In fantasy football, you're only worried about the NFL regular season, and Dak Prescott in the regular season does play well. He gets the job done in fantasy. Yeah, quarterback 9 is kind of
outrageous,
considering the guy was he finished as quarterback 3 last year, and yes, Dallas as a team got a lot worse, but Dak's weapons really didn't change. The running game changed, but if anything, I mean he's going to be throwing more, which might.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. Their running back game going way down the season. They're going to throw it way more. And Brandon Cooks, like, is he a wide receiver one? No, but I mean he's a big red zone guy, which is going to be a big help to him.
Not to mention Jake Ferguson too.
Yeah, and Ferguson.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks should show a better year. In the first half of the year, I at times forgot he was on the Cowboys. Second half of the year, I felt like they got him some more reps, and also Michael Gallup isn't there anymore either. So, but that's the only guy he lost, and he didn't do a whole lot last year. He's had injuries the last few years. He sounds the Raiders. So
he retired.
Right, he had to retire unfortunately. But but Dak quarterback 9 is that his ADP is extra low. Curtis, what about you? Who's
so?
Out to you.
ADP getting drafted too high, and this is actually a symptom of the position as well. Tight end Sam Laporta out of Detroit. There are drafts. His average draft position is late second, early third round in a lot of drafts across all different platforms. That is entirely too high.
No.
My draft last night, he was gone in the second round. I just don't understand why. Tight ends are a nice thing to have. They're great for flex. They're great to have if you have a two tight end position for your league. However, there's no reason you should be picking tight ends anytime before probably fourth, fifth round at least. And Sam Laporta, as a rookie, brought in 10 touchdowns last year. That is a mark that now he has set. I don't think there's any chance he reaches that again in
Absolutely
his
not.
second season. So Sam Laporta getting drafted way too high. He is as a Lions fan, he is a fantastic target. He's a great security blanket for Goff, and he is fantastic in the red zone. However, you cannot take him that high and expect him to live up to the value that you're trying to give him.
No.
That's not a thing. And that's, like I said, it's a symptom of the tight end position. Tight ends going before the fourth or fifth round in general, I think are just too high. So
Yeah, that's a good point. He's a great player. He's a great talent, and I'm sure the Lions are happy to have him. But
yeah,
going before the third round, that's
silly.
not good value.
Yeah.
It's honestly silly. I mean, and Kurt, and you're totally right. It's a lot of it is the position. And he deserves to be. Is it wrong that he's ranked as whatever it is, the tight end 3, 4, depending on your league?
If he was a wide receiver, then maybe second, third round would be a little more justifiable. But the dude's a tight end, and he's a good blocking tight end too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
So.
I think ESPN has him as tight end 2. Like I'd probably argue him maybe close to 3, 4, but tight end 2 I guess is fair. That's the Kelsey. Andrews is coming off an injury plagued year. Kittle's is coming weapons over there, but just going in the middle of the second round, third round, that's a little high for.
Their
Yep.
running back game is going to go up this year too.
Yeah, they do. So
yeah, second year for Jahmyr Gibbs. You have David Montgomery as well. That those two are back together again, and those two were dynamic last season. Kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type of story there. Physical back versus finesse back.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a little early for Sam Laporta.
Yep.
For me, 180p, one guy I think is going really low, who I think is a really solid fantasy is Matthew Stafford. So obviously getting older, you never know when an aging quarterback, they kind of fall off somewhat quickly. You never know if the injuries, but he was pretty solid last year. I feel like at least in the second half of the year, and he's ranked as like quarterback 21 or something like that. But he's going like very very late in draft. Now he's got Puka Nacua who going into his second year. Cooper Kupp, obviously injury concerns and age are a concern for Cooper Kupp, but he's healthy right now. He's still a very good receiver. Kyren Williams is a really good pass catching running back. So to me, he can still sling it. He can still throw the crap out of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little surprised that he was going as low as he was. I was a little surprised when the rankings came out for fantasy football a while back that he was ranked as low as he was and how late he's gone. Like to me, if I have really good like backs and receivers, if I'm able to get him in whatever round he's going, which is pretty late, I'm happy with that. So I'm a little surprised that
he's an easy QB2 on most fantasy rosters. There's no doubt about that. As somebody, like I said, Lions fan, I had a lot of exposure to Matthew Stafford at the time that he was here. As he's gotten older, health risks have really come into play. He can't play hurt like he used to, and that's just a fact of life. That being said, I mean, he still has the arm speed to get the ball into tight windows downfield. He still has that game drive. He still has the motivation, even after winning a chip. He is still, when he is at the top of his game, he's still probably top 5 in this league, depending on who he's throwing to, and with the receivers that LA has, no reason he can't be that as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Well, he's still a very good quarterback. There is no doubt about that. I mean, he won a Super Bowl only a couple years ago. And
yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna run through a few guys here, and you guys can tell me whether or not their IDPs are too high or too low, or just right. All right, so I'll assign you to player. We'll do boom, 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 boom. We'll do that.
Okay.
So, I'll start with you, Jordan Love. What are your thoughts? Is he going too high, too low, or just right?
If he goes, I think he's going just right. I mean, he has. I understand he has a lot of expectations this year. I understand that. Again, everyone's talking about his contract. Is like, his contract has nothing to do with fantasy. So it's just a contract. That's his money, not his fantasy production. So I honestly think he's just right. I mean, he's like, I get everyone's like, well, their wide receiver room is questionable. It's like, no, it's not. They have like they have a bunch of guys that Matt LaFleur, is he the greatest offensive coach ever? No, but he is a wide receiver whisperer. I mean, we saw it with like we saw last year with Dontavion Wicks, and not to mention Jaden Reed, who also broke out last year, and Christian Watson. Hopefully, he finally will stay healthy this year.
Yeah.
And they've upgraded their O line. They got Jordan Morgan in the first round. Like, I just think, and they also got Josh Jacobs, so now they have some viable running back room. And I think he's going. I think he's just right. I have him as my starter in my second league.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and yeah, I agree. Like he's very solid for 11. Is there a clear cut one? Maybe not, but there's a bunch of guys who are very good over there. Jaden Reed, Romeo Dubes. You mentioned Watson, if he can stay healthy. Dontavian Wicks is a guy who Packers, the coaches and even his teammates have been talking a lot about at camp. Tucker isn't bad either as a tight end. So yeah,
I mean, he was QB5 in fantasy last year.
yeah. So yeah, and I think right now he's ranked as somewhere in the
He,
top 10.
yeah, he really turned it on in second half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Did Jordan Love. So
definitely turned it around. All right, let's go with here, Curse. I'll go to you. What about Jaden Daniels? What are your thoughts on him?
rookie quarterback. I'm not a 100% sold on taking them too high for obvious reasons. We talked about rookies in general in fantasy just being more boom or bust for the one season. I I as long as he probably a tier maybe back tier two, early tier three quarterback option if you need him. But I don't have a lot of faith, especially when there's better quarterbacks on the board. Um, so as long as he's not taken before the guys like Jordan Love, like Pat Mahomes, like the rest of that tier, I am pretty happy with it as long as you don't it isn't a reach. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's around like quarterback 13 or so.
Yeah.
That's putting him probably in the eighth-ish
He's not
round.
above Stafford.
No, I would agree with that. I think Stafford it should be above him.
Yeah, but yeah, so they're kind of that depends. And honestly, I love the talent of him. I'm worried about the offensive line. I'm worried he's gonna take a bunch of hits, but
It's
he's
a
just
situation. It's not him. It's a situation. I mean, they just traded away Jahan Dotson too.
Yep.
yeah, which did not make any sense to a division rival, nonetheless. I thought was kind of silly, but yeah, he's probably going. He's probably going late enough to where his ADP is probably fine. But yeah,
Yeah,
like
I would agree. Like where he's at now, with the exception of maybe, Stafford jumping him, I think is probably fine.
that's probably the only word I would have too is if he's going ahead of Stafford, which has been tending to happen, probably should flop those two. All
Yep.
right, so let's move forward. Sailor, back to you. We're gonna switch positions now. Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones, I mean, why? Like, why? That's my question. Why do you want him on your team? I get he's a good running back. I get that he produced well when he did play in in Green Bay, but he's not at Green Bay anymore. Now he's on one of the most regressed teams in the league from last year in the Vikings. Like, and I get Ty Chandler. He's not the best running back in the world, but the thing is that Kevin O'Connell, even though he hasn't done much, he likes Ty Chandler a lot. He's gonna be getting a lot of carry share with him. And again, Aaron Jones, he's very injury prone, not just to any injuries, to big injuries. And their O line's awful. I mean, their quarterback situation is pitiful. It's just I just don't get why you would want him on your team when you could have somebody like Chuba Hubbard, a guy who has actually proven himself in bad situations. So I honestly don't think, like, unless you want to go into it, unless you have no other bench running backs like Ty Chandler or Jaleel McLaughlin, or just guys like that you can keep on your bench and actually trust. I don't think you should even draft Aaron Jones.
Yeah, he's definitely in a worse off situation. No, he should get the bulk of the carries, but like you said, O'Connell does like Ty Chandler a lot. He got more and more work as the year went on last year. Fire, but I mean, the only thing that would go for him is they may have to run the ball a lot, though the weapons are great. Their starting quarterback is Sam Darnold, and that's not
Yep.
good. All right, so Curtis, we'll go back to you. This is the last one, and then we're go to like probably our last segment of today.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua.
You said who? Sorry.
Uh, Puka Nacua from the Rams.
Got it. Okay. So the interesting part about Puka Nakua, I'm looking at for him, he's drafting way too high. So yes, LA has a decent passing game with Stafford. But as of right now, he's being drafted in between the first and second round in a lot of cases. And that is entirely too high for Puka Nacua. I think there are plenty of other wide receiving candidates that are going to be a better option than going with Nakua, who also has to share targets with Cooper Cup, with the running back who I can't think of the name right now. Either way, there's plenty of options in LA other than Puka Nacua. Going with a different wide receiver option out of a different team in a better situation, or even a worse situation where they hog the targets, is probably a better option. And I would probably go St. Brown above him. I would go, if he's healthy, Christian Watson above him. Um, and I'd probably even look at DeAndre Hopkins ahead of him as of right now. So I think he's going too high. I think that there is some room to regress for him in the draft position, unless he comes out and surprises. But he's not going to live up to that value, in my opinion.
He's not doing as good as last year, that's for sure.
No, exactly.
Yeah, like as an NFL player will be considered regression. I don't know, but for fantasy, he's gonna regress. Like the guy was like a fifth round pick, and only and people they thought his name was fun to say, so people joked about him. Then he also he went out and was little, he was lighting it up. It was like, oh wow, this kid's actually pretty damn good. But yeah,
Yeah, first, second round too high. I think for Nakua, probably if he's the third or I'd probably say fifth or sixth wide receiver, 5 or 6. I'd look at him at that point. But at that point, there's still a lot of decent options out there, so he may not even get that big that high.
Yeah,
and just it's one of those things. If you look at the receivers going after him, there are a bunch that I would probably be on par with, if not prefer, and just the value just isn't good. The value just isn't there, and that's something that it's very important when you're drafting in fantasy football, and the value isn't there. It's
yeah. And his production went down when Cooper Cup came back by a
Yeah.
lot.
yes,
It's partly because of the rapport that Stafford and Cooper Cup have.
Yeah.
he's healthy right now. Obviously, will he play the whole season? That remains to be seen. He's had some trouble
Yeah.
doing a career, but right now he's there, and he's going to take some targets from Puka Nacua. So yeah, back into the first round or second round is just too high.
Yep.
All right, so I have just a couple of questions. Just some burning questions I had. So Kyren Williams. Sean McVay announced that Kyren Williams is going to be the punt returner for the Rams. So Sailor, I'll ask this one to you. Does that help his fantasy value, or will it hurt his fantasy value?
Um, I don't think it'll do really much of either. I mean, we're gonna see how this new kickoff rules are gonna play out. But I mean, is he a great athlete? Absolutely, but he's not like a Devin Hester or like, just a great kick returner like Braxton Berrios or like Keyshawn Nixon. He's not that guy. Like, I just don't think it's going to do much of anything. I mean, the only thing I think it can do is hurt him because, like, I
Yeah.
get the injuries have gone way down with the new kickoff rules, but there's still the possibility of him getting more worn down and more like fatigued from them. So I just don't think it's a great idea,
Did
honestly.
McVay say punt return and kick return, or just punt return?
He only said punt returner. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if he wasn't specifying, but he
Okay.
that he went on some show or some podcast saying he's going to be their punt returner at least right now.
I just don't see why. I mean, you just drafted Blake Corum, who is a great,
Yeah,
like very
exactly.
shifty guy. So I just don't see the point.
Yeah, that really caught me by surprise. I'm worried about the injury. Like a lot of the returners, they are getting like a ton of, reps, like even Devin Hester did, wasn't catching that many passes outside the return game, which, obviously that's fine because he is to me the greatest return in the history of football. But because Kyron's probably going to get a lot of touches on offense, and now you're adding in the punts. Although the Rams have a pretty good offense, so maybe they won't be punting a ton. You know,
That too.
probably you probably would have. I'd be a little more worried if you use the kick returner. I mean, because obviously you're going to be kicking off one of your returning punts, but
I
it's
mean, for fantasy though, does it really matter other than the potential for injury? Because I mean, a punt returner and kick returner, they're going to give points to your defense and special teams. They're not going to do anything for
yeah,
your actual individual player in most cases. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a interest. I mean, it's kind of lopsided for McVay to do that, but at the same point, I don't think it has much fantasy value. I think it has a chance more to hurt him than anything.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I'm a little worried about the injury considering he's
Yeah,
probably out. I'm sure Corum will cut into it a little bit, but uh, yeah, it'll probably hurt him more than it will help him. All right, my next question is gonna be for you, Curtis. So we had a couple of high end receivers that were holding out this offseason. Brandon Ayuk obviously just signed his extension, but the time
mhm.
we're filming this, only a couple hours. CB Lamb only signed an extension a couple of days ago. Chase has not signed yet. He's holding in. Zach Taylor first said, okay, he should play week one. Now he comes out and says, I don't know. So, do you think these guys could that hurt them? Could that hurt them fantasy wise? Could they get off to some slow starts? What do you think?
Certainly it could. Yeah, I mean, if you're holding out, you're not in training camp with your team. You're not getting conditioned and ready for the season. And you can work out all you want on your own, but there's nothing like live game action with your teammates and with joint practices, joint training camps, that kind of thing. So it certainly could hurt. Upwards of the first say 4 weeks, because that's how long training camp usually lasts. They got to get up to game speed, and if they're not up to game speed going in, I mean, how many times we've seen holdouts that go in week one and they tear their ACL or they are just their conditioning is not up to snuff. They need to get back up to get their body where it needs to be. So it absolutely could hurt. Ayuk signing today definitely helps the 49ers, but it may not help them week 1 or 2. Good thing they have other options. Talk about Chase. He's going to need to get up to game speed. Talk about the what's that?
Uh, P. Lamb was the most.
Yeah, CD Lamb. There's one. Although Dallas, I think CD Lamb knew that was going to go into the waning hours because Jerry Jones has a tendency to not sign his top skill guys to contract extensions until literally the umpteenth hour. So that's neither here nor there. CD Lamb, I think, is probably going to be in the best case scenario out of all of those guys, um, because I think he knew that the deal was going to be done. But I mean, Ayuk a week ago said trade me.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden he's signed. So you really wonder what kind of shape that he's going to be in, where his holdout has been, where his motivations have been. I mean, Ayuk always really had a chip on his shoulder. Now he's got the contract. Now what does he do? So we'll see. Jury's out a little bit. I would say it hurts more than helps with the holdout for fantasy, and it should hurt their ADP as well. But in a lot of cases, from what I've seen, that has not been the case.
Yeah, I haven't seen those guys. I mean, those guys are obviously some of the top receivers. CB Lamb is a top five pick. Chase obviously is going very
Mhm.
high. Even Ayuk a little lower because you could argue he's not even the top option on his team, but he's obviously a great player. But yeah, I haven't seen their ADPs waver too much.
Correct. Yep.
I agree that they probably should, considering up until the point we didn't know if they're going to be on the field week one. It seems like Jamar Chase. I mean, Zach Taylor, the coach, said there's a chance he might not be on the field week one. So
Yeah.
And we're 9 days from the opening Sunday of the NFL season.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
we are.
So,
I mean,
and
we're right there.
exactly, in which I mean that the time's just stopping right now, but I cannot wait for NFL start. But the big thing is like these guys are signing and they're 9 days away. They have 9 days to get up to game speed. Not happening.
No way. And I think you mentioned a lot of times guys who hold out, even if they sign within a week or two before the season, a lot of times the first couple of games they do struggle a little bit. They
Mhm.
just where just getting their conditioning up to speed and just shaking off some rust. So like long term, I'm sure they will be top players, but they might not give you
It's
the
gonna take
full
some time.
ride for the first couple of weeks, and if you end up losing those weeks, you never know, that could decide playoff or no playoff. You never know.
Mhm.
All right, let's move forward. I'll ask you each one more question. Sailor, let me ask you about Caleb Williams. He obviously has got a lot of buzz, number one overall pick. He's got varying opinions out there about him. Is he a viable fantasy option this year?
I'm very on the fence with him. I mean, I think he could be a bench option, but I don't see him being more than a bench option, to be honest. I mean, like, here's my take on Williams. Is he in a great player situation with help around him? Yeah. Is he in a good coaching situation considering he's a quarterback? No. I mean, we saw it with like here's the thing that people aren't understanding. Is Caleb does he have all the talent in the world? Yeah. Does he have all the help on the field around him? Yes, but off the field, he has none. Like we saw it with Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields, who I still think can turn it around. I mean, he had zero help from Eberflus.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
he did.
Eberflus did squat to help out Justin Fields. The most he did for him was give him one receiver. That was it. He didn't actually try to coach him or develop him or really anything. He just put him on there with a bad O line, a bad receiver room, like no viable running backs at the time, and then one rookie tight end. And he expected it. He just said, "Here you go, put it together." And is I get Caleb Williams is in a better situation, but he's doing the exact same thing. Like
Yeah,
he's like, here you go, you figure it out. He's not like a Matt LaFleur guy or like an Andy Reid guy or like a Bill Belichick guy who's gonna actually develop him and actually teach him the ways of the game. He's just gonna put him on the field and be like, all right, have fun. So I don't I just think that Caleb Williams is a bench option at best if you really want a second quarterback on your team, which I'm still very I'm not really the biggest guy on having multiple quarterbacks. I do it just for those couple weeks where they're going to be playing the top defense and they might have an injured receiver or something, but I don't see him past bench option to be honest.
I want to compound on that real quick. Caleb Williams is in a spot where Justin Fields was, like you said, and Justin Fields was led to slaughter. There's no doubt about it. You've got even in his own division, he was just beat up constantly. And when he has to play Houdini and make 70-yard touchdown runs by himself, basically because he has no options down the field, that's a huge issue. And that's what really plagued Fields being in Chicago. Now Caleb Williams comes in, who's more of a pocket passer, and he's not as mobile on his feet. That's a whole issue in Chicago. And I mean, that dude's probably going to be sacked 20, 25 times
Oh
this
man.
season, without a doubt.
Yeah, I would be shocked if I could see the number being even higher. Yes, the receiver room is very very talented, but and he's a good athlete, but the line there is definitely a concern of mine. I feel like that's not being talked about. Well, I can see why with all the moves they made, obviously all the eyes and the headlines are going towards Caleb Williams when it comes to Bears camp, who everyone's looking for. But yeah, the line to me, if I'm looking at the five guys, I'm thinking they're gonna line up with, it's still not great if you ask me.
Mhm.
And all right, first of all, the last question, then we'll talk about each other's actual fantasy that you've already drafted. Rashad White, the running back for the Buccaneers, as you can see in Sarah's camera, he's a Bucs fan, got the flag there. There's a lot of people talking about he could be a potential bust. Do you think he'll be a bust or not really?
I actually want to lean on Sailor a little bit more for this. I want to get your take on this first because I
You want
want to
my take?
hear. Yeah, I want your take on this first. You're the Bucks fan in the room. I'm not as familiar with him as you are. So I would like to hear your side of this.
Okay, here's the thing. I don't think I think I'm gonna turn off the bias for a minute. So just forget that flag is there.
Okay.
Um, do I think he should go in the top 2 rounds? No. But do I think he'll be a bust? No. Because at the end, everyone's talking about like, oh, he averages, negative yards per carry. It's like, yeah, okay, they've upgraded their team a lot, and not only that, but he's not known for running the ball. He's known for being a receiving back. Like
Mm,
he's not known for grounding down the field and getting you those like last second push touchdowns. He's known for is being he's like if McCaffrey was 30 pounds heavier and didn't run the ball. Like basically all he does is he's a receiving back. And that's the thing. Like his overall NFL production may go down, but his fantasy production isn't going to change that much because and if anything, and we just drafted Bucky Irving, who I think was a steal, by the way. He was the shiftiest running back in all of college football last year. I honestly just think that's going to help him in the ways that he's going to have a less workload running the ball, which is what he needed, considering is he's a good running back, no, but he's not. Again, he's not that guy who's going to drive you down the field, get you like two or not two, 3 to like 8 yards per carry. He's just gonna be your pass catcher, and he's gonna be your your flat route guy, your Texas route guy, and that's good for fantasy. So I don't. So should he go in the top 2 rounds? No, but I don't think he's gonna be a bust either. I think that there's just a lot of unnecessary questions with him, especially considering we just got Bucky Irving. So I don't think
Probably
he's gonna be a bust. Mhm.
probably more like an RB7, RB8 kind of guy.
Yeah, like I wouldn't like I would take there's a lot of running backs I would take over him, but there's
Mhm.
also a lot of running backs I would take him over as well.
Yeah. So the thought there is to kind of add on to that is we talked about it at the top of the show. Running backs have an intrinsic value in fantasy football because they do so many different things. They run the ball and get points that way. They're good receiving backs, and White, who you're talking about, has that skill to be a receiving back out of the backfield and be good at it. So why wouldn't you take him at least in that group with second tier running backs rather than but the top 2 rounds is crazy. I would agree with that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. And that's coming from me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's almost guys. I think he will be. I think he's a very solid starter in fantasy. Maybe just going back to ADP, which was our last segment. Maybe his ADP might be a little high, but
Mm-hmm. But not
he's
a bust. No.
no, I
But
would.
Not a bust.
I'm going by Sailor's intuition on that. And like he's more familiar with obviously the Bucks roster than I am. I'm
Hmm.
gonna definitely lean on Sailor's thought process there
Yeah, and the Bucks like him too. We didn't draft Bucky Irving to take over his spot. We drafted Bucky Irving to help him out and take and like
as a
re
compliment, not as a
yeah,
replacement.
and reduce the workload that he
Mhm.
had.
Absolutely. But yeah. So I maybe going a little higher than you should, but as a bust, I wouldn't. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think he'll be a very solid option this year for fantasy and for the Bucks for that matter.
Yep.
All right, but
Absolutely.
to close out, we're actually going to share our screens on the Zoom here, and we're going to show each other's fantasy teams, and we're going to take a look at it. Sailor, I'll have you go first if you want to share that should work. Should work, and you all should be able to see the teams. That's how we set it up that way. So Sarah, you can go ahead and share your screen, and we'll look at your fantasy team.
So this one right here. This is my main team. It's funny. I actually just did this draft like 2 hours ago. Like I just did this draft just last. I was doing it at first just for fun, and this is actually my favorite team I've drafted so far. I got Kyler as my QB1. I had this was out of my 3 drafts. This was the only draft I had a pick before the 7th pick in. So I had a top 3 pick. I went with Bijan. I know like he's popular, but he's popular for a reason. He's gonna do great. I got a new coach. He's got a lot of help now. And then I took James Cook, who a lot of people are saying is gonna bust this year. I say the opposite. I mean, here's the thing: is that Diggs is gone, so they're not going to be passing the ball as much. Like they're still going to be passing it. It's Josh Allen, but they're not going to be focused on because they still don't have a pure wide receiver one yet. I like Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, but neither of them are pure wide receiver ones. Like Keon Coleman was a slot receiver in college, and Khalil Shakir same thing. Like he's so I see him as a very, very viable. I think he could even be an RB1 if you have a later pick. And then I went with Olave and Ayuk. I know Ayuk is the holdout situation, but he was available in the 5th round for me. And
That's not
I
a bad
mean,
place to get him.
Ayuk in the 5th round is not a steal, but I think that's a solid pick because, like, yeah, the holdout situation he hasn't practiced, but at the end of the day, I mean, Debo's injury prone, and Ricky Pearsall just got hurt as well, so he's still gonna get plenty of production. And then I went with McBride. Again, I don't think he's slept on anymore. I know he was slept on, but I mean, he has no competition at the tight end spot anymore now that Zach Ertz is gone. And the only receivers that they have there is MHJ and
Mhm.
Zay Jones, who is not even going to play the entire season. So I think he's going to have a lot of production there. And then I went Calvin Ridley, who I get it's a questionable quarterback room, but I mean DeAndre Hopkins just got hurt, and they have no and Traylon Burks is a bust. So he's going to get plenty of production. He proved himself to be a viable wide receiver one last year. And then the Ravens I went two defenses. I went the Raven. I like to have two defenses on my team just because I know you can do one, and then if it's a bad week for them, you can go ahead and pick one up. But I don't really like doing that because sometimes you can get unlucky in that aspect where all the defenses available on waivers are playing good teams. So I just went ahead and I got the Lions and the Ravens defense who I'm probably going to start the Lions week one against the Rams. I haven't decided that yet, but and then I got Justin Tucker as my kicker. Who I know I made the point with you don't have to have the best kicker in the league, just get one on a good offensive team. Well, Tucker's on both. I mean, he's a great kicker and he's on a great offensive team. And then I got Tajay Spears, who I talked about earlier. I did something a bit questionable. I drafted Kyle Pitts, but that was because he was available in the ninth round. Like, I was shocked when I saw him in the ninth round. Do I think he should go in like the fourth round? No. But like Pitts available in the ninth round, I think was just I did that. I kind of did that move where I'm like, okay, well, I don't want anybody else to have him. So I took him, and then I took JSN, who was gonna be my sleeper pick until I found out like just how undervalued McConkey is. And then I got BTJ, who Jake was talking about. I love his spot and position. I got Chuba Hubbard, who I mentioned earlier. And then I also got Jared Goff. Like again, I don't usually like going two quarterbacks. It's just I was planning on getting Lamar. He went one spot before me, so I had to get Kyler instead, who I'm so confident in, just not as much as Lamar. So yeah, that's my main team.
All right, very nice. I think it's a very good team. Kyler, I think will have a good year. Obviously, we talked about earlier, injuries have been the biggest concern for him. Quarterbacks that run are very, very useful in fantasy, kind of similar to how running backs that can catch the ball. Bijan, I think he's gonna have a huge year. There's a reason he's going as high as he's been going. Arthur Smith completely misused that guy, and I think he'll be used a lot more appropriately this year. And yeah, and then I think he'll have a good year. Maybe the first game or two, getting himself into shape, but you got him in the fifth round. That's solid. Trey McBride's very good. You got a solid bench. I think you'll be just fine. And all right. So Curtis, do you want to go ahead and share your screen so that we can
Yep.
look at your team?
A couple of things. I'm on Yahoo. So there's a couple of things that are a little bit different with mine. I've got two running back spots. I've got the tight end and the flex spot. My favorite pick on my starting roster right now is Jake Ferguson. I really like him as a tight end in Dallas, obviously with Dak there. We talked about Jake a little while ago. And his production. I think he's going to be a really good option in Dallas fantasy wise. Pat Mahomes, I went a little bit KC heavy here. The reason I went a little bit KC heavy is because, well, they're led by Pat Mahomes. And the fact of the matter is he spreads the ball all over the field, whether it's to Pacheco out of the backfield with the handoffs or passing out of the backfield. And then Hollywood Brown, should he get his injuries figured out, he should be okay. I've got him as a bench player right now. This lineup is not 100% set in stone, but but really, I like the volume of touches that I've gotten out of my main guys. Jalen Waddle aside, Tyreek Hill still going to be dynamic in Miami, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. First time I've owned him in a fantasy league. And then Tank Dell is one of my other favorites. He's going up against Indy week one, which that should be a score fest for Houston, in my opinion. Indy's defense is not the best. So him being in the red zone, being a spot for CJ Stroud to get the ball to is kind of Tank Dell's calling card. So I expect that he'll be able to score plenty of points. But Antonio Gibson, he's splitting carries with Ramondre Stevenson in New England, but there's a chance, depending on how Stevenson performs, that Gibson could take a bulk of the load of carries, and he also catches passes out of the backfield, which have an intrinsic value in themselves in fantasy, which we talked about. So I like Gibson's upside in that spot. He was actually a keeper. I didn't have a lot of other great options at keeper from last season, but he was a keeper. So working that in. Chris Godwin out of Tampa. He's pretty much a perennial target. You know him, Sailor. So I know you're familiar with how that's going to go. So good spot. I like the team so far. We'll see. Yahoo didn't necessarily like it, but Yahoo has a really weird grading system, so I'm not too worried about it. But good stuff. Nick Lockett was my steal. I got him second to last pick in my draft. believe it or not. I saw him in the same situation. I didn't want anybody to get him. So that's where I'm at.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, that's a solid team and very good value with Tyler Lockett. That's got him that late. I don't think
Yeah.
I've that late in any draft.
Did
Or
not expect to see him. I'm like, he's still here? And I got him so quickly. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
that's the best when you're thinking, oh man, my pick's coming out, come on, look at that, and then the one player just pops out, like, whoa, he's still available. That be gone
Mhm.
4 rounds ago. But
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and then defense, I went with Lions. I think their defense is gonna be massively improved over this season.
Yeah, they have a
So
secondary now. So
they do. They really, really do. And they don't have Cameron Sutton who's waving fingers at people and then giving up 60-yard bombs. So so there's that.
they drafted Terry Arnold in the first round, who I thought was the top corner in the draft, and he was. I mean, they took him as the second corner in the draft. They added a Carlton Davis. Say, are you familiar with him?
oh, I know they did.
He's he's a very solid cornerback too, and that's the role he'll be performing. And the front seven is very good. Aiden Hutchinson's an incredible talent. He's one of
Don't forget DJ Reader too. Just got him.
yeah.
Oh, you did. I forgot about that.
Yep. Yep. He's just taken off the pup list last week, so he's gonna be. He may not be good to go week 1, but week 2 or 3 he should be good to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna just say something real quick. I think Kirby Joseph is the most underrated free safety in the entire league.
I'm pretty sure he's also Aaron Rodgers' father, but
Yeah.
I was picking up Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I wish we had Kirby Joseph.
It's very weird being in this spot, being a Lions fan, to actually have people envy people on our roster. So this is a new feeling. Like it still hasn't gotten old yet, and it hasn't lost its novelty. So
I think there was some stat like last year when they won the first playoff game. It was like they hadn't won a playoff game since like text messaging was a
Yeah.
oh, well before. Yeah, it was 91. They beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think he knows that.
Like,
Yep.
there's a lot of people were saying like, oh, if a Lions fan texts you, it's the first time they've ever texted about a playoff.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the thing. That's what they won a playoff game. But yes,
Exactly.
the franchise has done a complete 180, and opposed to being the laughing stock, they are basically the complete opposite. They were in the NFC title game last year and were almost in the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Personally, I think they will go back yet again.
Hey, my Bucks almost beat you. Let me just say that.
Mm,
We almost did. If we
Up
had a
through-
secondary, we would have.
there you go.
Yeah, that was a close game. Bucks put up honestly a better fight than I thought. I thought that game.
They
Baker
put up a better
proved
fight than the
himself.
Rams.
Yeah.
All right, I'll share my team, then we will close this thing out. So this is an ESPN league. I also have Kyler Murray. I think he's pretty solid. I have Kenneth Walker. I don't love my running backs, to be honest. Kenneth Walker and James Conner. Walker, I'm hoping Seattle runs the ball a little bit more. And I think they might, but I've always liked the talent on him. He's had some injuries his first 2 years. I know Charbonnet is there as well, but I think if he stays healthy, he should be pretty solid. James Conner, he's weird. Every year, I always think he's going to fall off, but for the most part, he produces. He finished really well last year. I know Trey Benson is there as well. But I think they'll run the ball a little bit more. So I think he's pretty solid. I have CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, we talked about the holdout. Maybe the first couple of games he starts off slow. But we also mentioned that he's probably going to be affected the least just because Jerry Jones always loves waiting to the last possible minute to sign his guys. As you mentioned, Lamb probably knew this was coming, but Jerry probably told him, all right, here are the terms. Like, I'm cool. All right, just don't tell anybody. I don't like announcing this stuff till about a week before the season. And also,
he likes leaving us waiting.
he does. He loves keeping us in suspense for sure.
Dude's gonna be late to his own funeral.
He's a bit of a goofy goober.
Yeah. But Marvin Harrison, we talked about him. I think he should be a star this year. Mark Andrews, obviously coming off a bit of an injury, but I think he's still a great tight end. The number one passing option to me is still in that offense. I have Debo. Week 1 against the Jets, that obviously isn't the best matchup in the world. He'll probably be matched against Sauce Gardner. But I'm not sure if maybe Porter will look for him a little more in the beginning with Ayuk holding out. I mean, he's a weird player. I don't know if I even classify him as wide receiver. He's just a weapon to me. He's just kind of jack of all trades guy. I don't know if
He's his own type of player.
a very niche type of guy, but he produces. He's a productive player, but like, well, would I rank him as one of the best receivers in the league? Honestly, not really. Would I rank
He's
him?
not even a top 25 receiver.
He's not really a he's not a receiver in the world, but he's a very good football player. I'd say. Uh, Seattle's defense. I figured they're playing a rookie Bo Nix and whatever the hell that Denver offense is this year. So I figured they should have a pretty solid week. Young Ku, I like the pick a lot. I got him in the 15th round. I was slightly surprised he was still there. Uh, he's a good kicker. You know, he's blocked my last couple of years. Their offense should be a lot better this year, obviously with Kirk Cousins opposed to Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke last year on the bench. Raheem Mostert, I'm sure he's going to regress a little bit. 18 touchdowns, it's tough to beat that, but and obviously A-Chain's there, but I didn't think he was a bad bench piece. Brian Thomas, we've talked about him a lot today. I like him a lot.
Love that pick.
Hawkinson was a stash guy. Hopefully, I got him back sooner rather than later. I already have Andrews, but I got him late enough to where
That's a decent, again, somebody I'm familiar with. That's a decent pick depending on where you got him. The biggest thing with Hawkinson is how is he going to be able to work with Sam Darnold? Hawkinson is more of a short to intermediate pass tight end, and he's a yak tight end for sure. So
Yeah.
if he can be in a window where Darnold can get him and he can get downfield, then he'll be okay. But his targets, his productivity since he left Detroit and went to Minnesota have been falling off the cliff every year.
Yeah. I still have him stashed in 2 of my leagues though.
I think I got him in the 10th round or so.
I got him in the 13th. I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
That's pretty good. 13th, 10th is a little high, but not egregiously.
There wasn't a whole lot there. I was like, you know what? Let me just stash it.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
I have Dubes. It's anyone's best guess who's going to emerge from that Packers receiver room. I like Dubes. He was pretty good. That'll probably be a matchup based guy. Mims was I just took a flyer on him.
Mims, I kind of like that.
Maybe with the kickoff stuff, maybe he'll get a couple more touchdowns than he would have. Devontae Williams. I mean, I'm hoping, first full year off the ACL, he produces a little bit better. I'm hoping Denver runs the ball a lot. I think they should, because you got a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, and then Jordan Mason. He's now. I actually think I picked him up after the draft. With Elijah Mitchell out for the year, he's the number 2 to McCaffrey. McCaffrey is a workhorse as it gets. He's quiet to help stuff the last 2 years. You never know. As guys get older, maybe the Madden curse gets him out now, so I took a stash and Kendra Miller, I took him at I think that might have been like my last non-kicker defense pick, like the 14th round. I figured Kamara's getting older. If he gets hurt, he'll have to step up. But he's hurt. I did not think he was going to be hurt when I took him. I wouldn't have taken him, but not like I said, not a fan of my running backs to be honest. But overall, I think the team's pretty good. I guess we will see what. But let's bring you all back. That's all we got for you guys today. Sailor, Curtis, thank you guys so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. We'd love to do this again. But until next time, so long. Have a great day.